Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is it worth it to buy Mind vs. Might, the new duel deck for Magic the Gathering? Mind vs. Might contains two 60-card decks intended to be played against each other for fun, engaging casual games of Magic for both new and experienced players alike. With new artwork and two headlining foil cards, collectors' interests are also in mind with this product. Mind vs. Might also features an array of reprints, so perhaps even players of formats from Modern to Commander will see singles they want to single out for their decks. But is Mind vs. Might a mighty value to players, or are there problems that we need to be mindful of? Let's take a look. Mind vs. Might contains the following. Two 60-card decks that are not a part of any specific format, but rather are a collection of cards from throughout Magic's history. The two premium face cards are Joyra of the Gitu, a reprint of a $2 rare and popular commander, and Lovisa Cold Eyes, a reprint of an 86-cent rare and a commander that has a cult following of eccentric or against-the-grain brewers. There's a lot of oddities about this particular duel deck, so I'd like to just begin with that. Oddities. Let's start with the cards themselves. Mind vs. Might contains 100% reprints, and thus no preview cards for the upcoming set. Typically, duel decks either feature two Mythic Planeswalkers and no previews, or they feature two non-Planeswalkers and preview cards from the upcoming set. For example, Blessed vs. Cursed contains 6 preview cards from Shadows over Innistrad. Zendikar vs. Eldrazi contains 6 preview cards for Battle for Zendikar. Speed vs. Cunning contains 6 preview cards for Khans over Tarkir. Heroes vs. Monsters, 6 for Theros. Izzet vs. Golgari, 6 for Return to Ravnica. That's pretty consistent, going very far back. The established pattern is either a duel deck is 2 Planeswalkers, or a duel deck has preview cards of the next set, and these alternate. But Mind vs. Might has neither. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a break with what has been a very, very consistent pattern, and I feel it's worth noting as an oddity. Not only does this duel deck not contain preview cards of the upcoming set, but it also does not thematically preview the next set. For each of these previous duel decks, they were set on the plane that we would next be going to. This is, amongst other things, a way to wet our whistle and build excitement and hype for the next set. But Mind vs. Might is not set on Amonkhet and has 0 Amonkhet themed cards or artwork. It is themed after a plane, however, and that's the next oddity. Mind vs. Might not only features 2 premium cards of legendary creatures from Dominaria, but the included cards and new artwork establishes largely a Dominarian theme for these decks. This is Duel Deck's Dominaria? A Dominaria throwback is indeed an oddity, and more evidence that Wizards might be hinting we are returning to what was once the center of the MTG multiverse. It is unfortunate, given both the setting of Dominaria and the mechanics included in Mind vs. Might, that certain much needed and easily included reprints are absent. But before we talk about what's odd that these duel decks are missing, let's focus on what's really odd that they include. Banned cards. Mind vs. Might, specifically the Mind deck, has a shockingly high number of cards that have been banned in various formats. In fact, it is based around a mechanic that scored a 10 on the Storm scale, the scale of how likely to unlikely these mechanics returning would be, and that mechanic specifically is Storm. Grapeshot, Empty the Warrens, Temporal Fissure, all Storm cards so powerful that they had to be banned in Pauper, which is a very competitive format. And yet they are all included here as key pieces in this product centered around casual play. Add to that the Storm card of Mind's Desire, which is banned in Legacy. That's right, I'll repeat, this card is banned in Legacy. And thus, I think it is fair of me to say the power level of the Storm duel deck is very high. Incredibly high, filled with banned land cards as it is. Add to that this same deck has cards with mechanics from Suspend to Splice on Arcane and legacy and modern powerhouses such as Young Pyromancer and Goblin Electromancer, the Take an Extra Turn card of Beacon of Tomorrows, and the word salad spells of Firemind's Foresight, Sift Through Sands, Peer Through Depths, and Reach Through Mists. And I also think it is fair to say the complexity and potential play here in this deck is absurd. Alright, so what's in the other deck? Stomp City. The opposing deck is simplistic and straightforward. Cast creatures, pump them up, turn them sideways, and smash face. Well, this may seem like the logical contrast to the Is It Control Fest it is facing. Anyone who's ever been on the losing end of blue knows that when outracing Control or Storm is your only option for success, you're going to have a hard time. Which brings me to a really clear con I'd like to discuss. These decks are simply not balanced against each other. Never mind the over-complexity of the Mind deck for newer casual players, but simply on a deck versus deck level, the Mind deck is going to snap back and overwhelm the creatures of the Might deck most games. If the Mind player is not skilled at control, they will flail hopelessly as Might kills them quickly, and feel frustrated wondering how exactly they are supposed to win with a deck that is largely filled with non-creature spells. In other words, regardless of which of these two decks is winning, someone is not going to enjoy the gameplay experience. Finance. How much would you guess it would cost to purchase the 120 cards included here? In their non-dual deck printings, of course, if you wanted to assemble these two decks yourself. Going by average market pricing at the time of release, it would cost you approximately $59.12. So that's more than double the MSRP of $24.99. That might seem like an extraordinary good value, but when we look at the actual individual card values, we find there's really only two notably high-priced cards, Coat of Arms and Beacon of Tomorrows, each approximately an $8 card, as well as several cards valued at approximately $2 each. Battalion's at $3.49, which is a nice inclusion, but again, where is this card seeing play? Zozo the Punisher and Joyra at $2.50 each, Guttural Response at $2, but again, these are odd cards. And most notably out of the entire decks, is the inclusion of not one, not two, but 3 Rift Bolts, which are $2.25 each. Beyond these cards, we see a collection of $1 or less cards. And since there's two 60-card decks here, yes, even 35, 45, 55 cents, and all those cards start to add up. Nonetheless, that's a high price tag of singles for $24.95. But again, you need to ask yourself, what are we getting here and where is it going to be played? Cards like Zozo the Punisher and company are not played in competitive formats, but instead command a non-zero sum price tag due to their appearances in commander lists. That certainly can be said of Coat of Arms, a commander staple for tribal decks, and Beacon of Tomorrows, which isn't needed outside of EDH. The exception here are those Rift Bolt inclusions, a staple of burn decks everywhere from Modern to Legacy. While the price was not really high to begin with, the 3 of reprint here is going to help keep mono-red entry deck prices down across formats, which is great, but it's really disappointing that with Joyra's Suspend mechanic being featured here, the now modern legal and modern overpriced Ancestral Visions was omitted from this set, a card that has been printed in a previous dual deck, and whose high price tag really could have used a reprinting. Or with Cold Eyes being from the Ice Age Cold Snap block, simply making all those mountains snow-covered mountains to solve the ridiculously high prices of snow-covered mountains. And while we're talking Cold Snap, with Mishra's Bauble in the $50 range, including 1 or 2 of it in the Cold Eyes deck would have been much appreciated to bring that uncommon down to a more normal price range. I'm not saying all of these should have been done, but to not even do one, it really seems like missed opportunities. When else are you going to conceivably reprint Snow-Covered Mountains or Mishra's Bauble? So if this increased MSRP of $24.99 is not giving us better included reprints or better balanced decks, is it at least giving us better boxes? Included as well are 2 redesigned, artwork-covered deck boxes, which amazingly can now hold sleeved cards. Cardboard technology may have improved here, but remember, in the end, it is still just cardboard. Luckily, Duel Deck Dual Boxes, which also happen to feature the great artwork, continue to be available for this set. Unfortunately, they are sold separately and usually cost approximately $9.99 for the pair. But I've always been a fan of these, if for no other reason than they have the correct type of deck box flap, and you also get the oversized deck box carrier, which can hold both smaller deck boxes or just oversized cards and other oddities. But no, I'm still not impressed with cardboard deck boxes, and I don't see that as a justification for the higher MSRP. Final conclusion: due to the Storm deck's high power and complexity, Mind vs. Might is not a dual deck for new players, or casual players looking for fun, balanced games. These decks are not balanced. Commander and EDH players are those most likely to find this a good pickup, due to its inclusion of foil EDH commanders, other singleton favorites such as Coat of Arms, and alternate artwork on old classics. Despite the financial value technically being there, this dual deck is mostly lackluster reprints, has no preview cards, and after this hits market is likely going to be seen as a collection of low-end cards, which are not even that much fun to play against each other as decks. The inclusion of Storm as a deck here is beyond baffling. The lack of reprints such as Ancestral Visions in a Suspend deck, or Snow-Covered Mountains in a Cold Snap deck, it's just facepalm worthy. And I would steer any new or casual players towards much better, equally affordable dual decks. Grade D for disappointing disaster. I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. Do you have a favorite dual deck where you think both decks are perfectly balanced against one another and the most fun to play? Let me know in the comments below. And you can help me out by remembering to like, share, subscribe, or just by leaving a comment. And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.